So these are over adding and subtracting fractions when they don't have the same denominator, which is what we did yesterday. So fill in the red. It says to add fractions with different or unlike denominators, you have to find a common denominator. And then we talked about least common multiple yesterday as well, but whenever you're talking about fractions, they call it least common denominator, but it's literally the same process. It's just you're making a denominator, so they call it LCD. So fill in those two, and then over here, okay, so we have, it says write the addends as equivalent fractions with the LCD of 6, so they tell you what the least common denominator would be, and then if you look right here, hang on. If you look right here, they give you the two fractions they want you to use. So you have 1/2 and 1/3, and then it tells you the LCD is 6, and if you think about it, the least common multiple of 2 and 3 is 6. So this is what you have to do whenever you're working with fractions. I always like to write it directly below, so 1/3 or 1/2 and 1/3, and then if the new denominator is going to be 6, I went ahead and wrote that. And then you have to think of it as how many times, think of it as separate fractions. So 1/2, how many times does 2 go into 6? Well, 3. You have to multiply 2 by 3 to get to 6. So since you have to balance everything out, if you multiply 2 by 3 to get to 6, you have to multiply 1 by 3, which makes it 3/6. And then over here, 3 can go into 6 twice. You have to multiply by 2. So multiply the numerator by 2, and you have 2/6. And then over on step 3, it says add. So if you were to add these two things, by the way, what I'm writing right here is what's supposed to go in these boxes, but they're too small for me to write in. So you can put it in the boxes if you want. But 2/6 or 3/6 plus 2/6, you add the numerators, so you have 5. And then remember, denominator stays the same, just like yesterday when we added and subtracted with like denominators, because now they have like denominators. So it'd be 5/6. And this is what goes here. And then the adding part is what goes in this little box. And then the first part goes in here. But it doesn't matter if you wrote it in there, just as long as you have it on your paper. All right, so for these first 6 examples, it just says find the least common denominator, which is basically the same exact thing as finding the least common multiple, but you're just looking at the denominators. So 3/4 and 2/2, the denominators are 4 and 5. So you have to find the LCD of 4, and that's a comma, 4 and 5. You can make a factor tree, you can make a list, but sometimes you can just think about it. If you think of the multiples of 4, it's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And so 20 is going to be the LCD because 5 will go into 20. Over here, 7 and 3. Sometimes your best starting position is maybe just to multiply the two of them together. So with 2/7 and 1/3, you have 7 and 3. And 3 won't go into 7. So if you try multiplying it, you have 21. And if you think about it, 21 is the smallest option that they will both go into. So that's your least common denominator. It's not always like that, so don't think that. But a lot of times it might be. Like over here, we have 3/5 and 1/2. 2 won't go into 5. The next multiple of 5 is 10. 5, 10, 15. And the LCD is 10, but also 5 times that 2 is 10. Another thing to always start off with is right here we have 8 and 16. If one of the numbers can be multiplied or divided into the other, then that's your answer. So like 8 times 2 is 16. Think of the factors of 8. You have 8, 16. So the answer is 16. 9 and 6. That one's not as simple. So let's list it. You can make a factor tree if you want. Let's see, we've got... Okay, so if you list it, you get the factors of 9 are 9, 18, and so on, but I stopped because the factors of 6 are 6, 12, 18, which means that my least common denominator would have been 18. Here, 4 and 3, if you just multiply those together, you would get 12. And also, if you were to make a list, if you make a list, you have 3, 6, 9, 12, 4, 8, 12. So you can visually see that the LCD is 12. So make sure you're caught up on all that. And then I have a separate video for the bottom half because it's actually doing the adding and subtracting part. And then there'll be an Edpuzzle video as well.